We-
So, welcome to Meaningful Interviews. I'm your host, Rabbi Chaim Berlin. I'm here today again with Rabbi Yaakov Homnick. We had such a wonderful feedback. The feedback is still coming. Just this morning, I got a text from someone. I don't think he's a Chaim Berliner, but he lives in Lakewood. And he wrote to me. Briefly. He says that that interview with Rabbi Homnick was phenomenal. He says, I don't know how much the Chaim Berliners enjoyed it, but I definitely enjoyed it.
No, I think there was what for everybody to enjoy, and there was what it may have been irritating to everybody in some way also. But trying to be honest and true.
And trust me, it was enjoyable with anyone that's, like you say, honest and a Yiddish Shemayim. Okay, this is not about gossip. This is about looking at things and trying to understand. Yet it ain't that everyone can decide what he wants to do with it. Right. So I'm very thankful to you, because it took me years to get anyone to speak about Chaim Berlin. And today I want to talk about a very special person who passed away last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, who was related, a cousin or a relative of the more known Shlomo Carlebach, the singer, the composer, which in Hashem, we will do a few interviews about him around his yahrzeit time with Rabbi Yaakov, who knew him, and he was a very good friend of his father's, he told me so. And I know that Shlomo, I wrote about in my book, I don't think it was an official Talmud in Chaim Berlin, but he spent a lot of time in the library. I heard things from people that I interviewed. But anyway, so when I wrote my book on the Rabbi Hutner, the Rebbe, I became aware of an issue that there was in Chaim Berlin. I don't know the years. I imagine Rabbi Yaakov would know that too. But anyway, there was a sichsuk. There was a disagreement between the administration and Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach zatzal about him being, I think, in the position of Mashgiach. Am I right?
Yes, yeah, he was the Mashgiach. When I came to Chaim Berlin Beis Medrash, he was the Mashgiach, because Rabbi Victor Miller had been the Mashgiach when my father was a Talmud, and but when Chaim Berlin moved to Far Rockaway, Rabbi Miller, it was a little too far for him, and so he because Rabbi Miller was the Rav of Young Israel of Rugby, and to Bensonhurst, I'm sorry, not Bensonhurst, but to Bronzeville, he still was willing to go, but not as far as Far Rockaway. So once they moved to Far Rockaway, nobody had to fire him. He just wasn't interested in continuing.
And what year are we talking? 1980?
No.
No, because Rabbi Hutner passed away in 80, much earlier.
Right. No, I got to the Chaim Berlin when I started being around Chaim Berlin Beis Medrash, is before I was in the Beis Medrash, because I was in the high school down the block, and we would come in and schmooze. Ben Astarim would come in, we'd end up in the Beis Medrash a little bit. So I started in 1969, I think.
Oh.
And Rabbi Carlebach was already Mashgiach for a couple of years.
Rabbi Carlebach was already Mashgiach. Okay, so the Kitzer, I interviewed him here in Borough Park. He used to learn the Lakewood Koil on 16th Avenue, 52nd Street. I went to see him there. He was already an older person. He must have been 84, 85. He was in his 80s. The couple got out of it. I felt his head he was fluent. He was good. He was coherent. He was sharp. And we spoke. He didn't want, to be in public. We went into the library section of the Lakewood Koil. And he told me, and this left an impression on me. He said from the beginning, although, I and Chaim Berlin, we had a difference, and I was let go. He said, you should know it was Rabbi Hutner zatzal who gave me my job. I remember he told me that. And he said, because the word on the street was that Rabbi Hutner was the one who let him go, even though maybe officially it wasn't that way. but Rabbi Hutner called all the shots at the end of the day in those days for sure. And he said, I want to be Hakaras Atayv that. And he told me mamish how it, right when he came here, I think in 47 or so after the war, he was shmeted, he had no parnasa, he was crushed and beaten up, and was devastated. And he made a point to tell me very clearly that it was Rabbi Hutner who saved me, who gave me a place, who, again, at that time, I think maybe he was a Rebbe in the Yeshiva. I don't remember all the details now, but
no, when he came after the war, remember, he had never been a Yeshiva Bacha in Europe because the war started when he was 16 or something. So, and he came and he was already 20 or 21. So they brought him in and allowed him to work his way into the base medrash in such a way that, of course, at first he was learning with the wicked guys, but he began to. He picked it up. He picked up the way of learning and the sprach and all it is, and they allowed him to go up through the ranks. As when he got to the next level, he got the next level chavrusa, and he worked his way up and became a chashuv talmud.
Okay, so before you tell me what what took place, what happened over here, that they had this kind of parting of ways between the yeshiva and himself. Tell me a little bit about him, what you know as far as, tell me your impressions, please.
So when I came to Yeshiva, he was the Mashgiach. Now, as I said, before I was in Beis Medrash, I was also in the high school. And we come in and out by lunchtime, this and that. Well, when the New York Jets played in the Super Bowl, so it was my job, to come in and whisper in the guy's ear whenever they scored a few points, and a few guys that were interested,
Right.
And I was a kid around the yeshiva. I'm just giving you a watch.
Yeah, right.
So, and then later, eventually, I made it into the base medrash. Now, again, because of the whole weird thing that was done with me, that they graduated me from high school at 14 years old. So I came to base medrash at 14, which I was completely unprepared for on any level, except to some extent intellectually, maybe, but I didn't have the maturity,
right,
to be able to go through the process of putting in a few hours of learning, preparing for the shir and listening to the shir. And so I was, I either had no chavrusa at some points, or I had a chavrusa who was really like from a learning background, who maybe went to some high school and got through it, and you had to go to base medrash, otherwise you were a loser. Right. But I had these guys who weren't really right to learn much, and my instincts of learning were already better than this, but I wasn't that interested either. So it was a very unhealthy mix. And I started at 14 years old in the base medrash, and my father had this thing that he did with me where he would learn with me from when I was 11 or 12. He'd learn with me Rabbi Chaim Berlin.
On Rambam.
Yeah, to try to, right. So he'd teach me the Rambam, but I didn't know the Sugi or anything. I only know the words of the Rambam. And then he starts teaching me the Chaim Berlin. And he's asking me the kasha, and I got to work on the kasha with him, and I'm going, I don't know. And my father always would go, you have enough information, and let's hear what you have to say. And I would go, no, I don't have enough information, which was a funny little guy of a kid. Rather than saying, hey, I'm a little kid, leave me alone, I always said, I don't have enough information. I blamed it on the lack of information. So right. I had the confidence. If I had the information, I'd solve it. But anyway, and that's how my father kind of trained me, which in those moments I might have been impressive for my age. But then now you got to go and do it all day. You know what I mean? It's like you're dating and you're good on the dates, but now you got to be married 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a different thing. So that's basically, so I wasn't, the truth is, in all honesty, I just wasn't ready to be in base medrash at 14 years old. Now the Mashgiach, he's Mashgiach for me like he is for everybody else. And I'm sure he felt bad for me, because
sure what? I didn't hear you sure what?
I'm sure he felt bad because I was in over my head.
Oh.
but he's the mashgiach. It's his job to make sure that I'm learning.
Right.
So he would always try. And to one of this, I'll give you a marshal. One of the things that I did for a little bit of escape is that I would, after first Seder, I'd maybe grab a bite or not, and I'd go to the park to play basketball. That was a little escape for me, but then I'd come an hour late for second Seder, or an hour and a half. It went by the game. Didn't go by the clock. Didn't go by the clock.
Right.
And I'd come in and he'd look at me, all right. And whoever my second Seder Chavrusa was, there was some long-suffering character. And so I always had two types of Chavrusa. Either a guy who's so weak that he just needs somebody to sit next to him, or a guy who's so strong that he doesn't really need me. So if I'm not there, he's learning anyway. So those were the two kinds of, and I was happy to have the stronger one. It's a better look when you're sitting with the stronger guy.
Yeah.
But meantime, I'm not there. So there were kufas where he would ignore it for a while. Then he'd call me over and say, "What are you doing in the middle of the afternoon?" So I realized I have to tell him something, So I started telling him that I'm going to the library. It wasn't true, but I figured
Right.
with the German background,
His German background, right?
Right, that he'll have more tolerance for that idea than that I'm playing basketball.
Right.
So all right. I said, listen, the learning is a lot. I'm young, so you go to the library. That wasn't so bad. He could live with that. And so I'm just giving you but here and it took really for me 4 years before 3 years to I got pretty close to it. The fourth year is when after 4 years rather, the fifth year is when I really started learning seriously, and I was just a regular guy. And by the way, even that happened. I give a lot of credit to Rabbi Shlomo Bronstein, who's still alive, who was the night Seder Mashgiach. So I'm showing you how the Mashgiachs were all looking at me, always trying to figure out how to help me, how to stop me from being a nudnik, how to stop me from being a loser, So, but the night Seder Mashgiach, he came up with a line that really made a difference. Because when I walked in the beginning of my 50th year, I walked in the door like the first day of the month for night Seder. And Rabbi Shlomo Bronstein should be well. He said to me, Yaakov David, how old are you? I said, 18. He said, oh, okay. So now you're a regular Yeshiva, you're 18. And that was more like in one sentence, he gave me a keli.
Right.
A trigger in my mind that I'm not anymore the whiz kid who's there under the age of 18. I'm a regular guy. It's my 50th year. All right, use that as an advantage, but you got to learn. And that was a real trigger. So I'm just showing you what these mashgiachim were dealing with me. I was really, they were working harder on me than on all the other people.
So was Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach's type of hashgacha more with a strict, stern approach, or more, not just with you, with overall, what was his general approach? More with Ava or Yira?
So from my observation and my experience, he always tried to use Ava if possible. And it was Ava was the first, first you try Avram, then you try Yitzchak.
Right.
So he would always he would try to do with Ava, which I think worked better for the people who either were pretty good on their own, or the people also who were trying hard. The way Chaim Berlin was structured in those days, you don't have this anymore. But in those days, there was stronger guys. I should really say three categories. There were the super strong guys, and there was like 20 of those, and they talked to each other, and they were like a yeshiva within a yeshiva. And then you had the basic guys, they were pretty strong, they're learning, they're trying. And then you had this bottom class, which may have been a third of the yeshiva in numbers, of guys who they were from kids from Flatbush, Park. You're supposed to go and put in a few years after high school. And so they were going through the motions. And it was very hard for those guys, because if nobody ever chopped them and got them to get the system, sort of to break through the chop, how the questions and answers are going, how the reading is going. So a lot of them were stuck, but they were very erlich. So the Mashgiach did a good thing with those guys, a very admirable thing, is that he would take those guys and bring them into his chumash. So the guys who loved him, he never approached for his chumash. They loved him, let them do it. The system's working for them. But the guys who the system was not really working for them, but they were sincere. Those were the guys he'd pull into his chumash. And some of them loved it. I mean, you'd see guys come out all excited, very energized at the end of this year. He gave it maybe from 3 to 4 in the afternoon.
So did he have a good hasbara? His explanation?
He had a fantastic hasbara. And that's also this is just in the measure of the man. In turn, it was greatness as a human being, because he came to America and had to figure out how to speak English.
Right.
It's not just he didn't have the other background. It's a new language too. Everything is from scratch. After suffering, after losing his parents, after all of that. And that's why I advise everybody, it's well worth the 4 hours to watch because he gave 4 hours of testimony to the Spielberg
Foundation, the Shoah Foundation.
And it's on YouTube. Look for it on the Solomon Carlebach.
Right.
It's well worth it. And I saw one of the bloggers gave a link to it. It's worth the time because it's brilliant and he's patient with the nudnik who's interviewing him, a real nudnik. But he keeps his cool. So anyway, so after all the suffering that he went through, the whole fact that he survived is amazing. And he had several siblings that were alive because they had been shipped out earlier, but they were all either in Israel or England.
Right.
And he ended up in America. And so he taught himself English. And like a lot of people who teach themselves English from the dictionary, they have a better vocabulary than the average guy. They may occasionally misuse a word, but they know more words.
Yeah.
So I was a guy who liked English. I was always a little entertaining to talk to him, just to listen to his use of English. I'll give you one time when he was trying to muscle me ice in a nice way, but a stern way. And he said to me, "I don't want to preside over your demise."
That's good.
I never forgot that. That's what he told me. It's brilliant.
That was good. So let me ask you, okay, tell me about the relationship in the early days between him and Rabbi Hutner. What can you tell me about that?
Well, look, we're not behind closed doors on any of us, obviously. But the fact is, I told you this in the previous interview, that on Yom Tov, Rabbi Hutner's made the sudas in Yeshiva.
Yes.
Downstairs in the lunchroom. But in those sudas, it was Rabbi Hutner and his family, which by my time, his kid is already the wife of Rabbi Yonason. So it's Rabbi Hutner and his Rebbetzin, the Rabbi Yonason, his Rebbetzin, Rabbi Shechter and his kids. And Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach and his kids. That was basically, and then a few above from that were either Yisayimim or Bali Tshuva, or estranged from their home for some reason, or they lived out of town. That's who's the rest of the table of people who didn't have a place. And the Chaim Berlin would take those guys in and was very violent to them, including some, and most of them turned out pretty well. I mean, there was maybe 1 or 2 that blew up and turned out badly, but 90% of them turned out well. But there was always the Gemilas Chesed was there with the Torah, because you always saw a few of those guys. And the great thing that Label Rudder did is that he took notes. Label Rudder's parents were from, they had a bakery, but they weren't. He felt as a yeshiva man he should be around yeshiva light on Yom Tov. And the yeshiva always accepted him. So he basically always came on Yom Tov. Every single little remark that Hutner made, he wrote down. So if you take his sefer, it's unauthorized, extra legal.
I spoke to him.
Yeah, but there's tremendous material there. All kinds of remarks and kashas and terutzim. Plus, he tries to write the bigger Maimon, but you don't need him for that. You have the
right.
But even in the big Maimon,
Right. Let's get back to the point. So what was the story?
So no, I'm just saying. So, but of the four families that were there,
Well,
it's
Rabbi Carlebach was one of them, and it was
Yeah.
very warm. It was very warm. Everyone was together,
absolutely,
like
absolutely.
one large family.
Right. So I'm
Okay.
saying for a man who was a Yosem, who both parents were killed, who had to teach himself the language, who had to marry into a family of Yankees who didn't, of course, at the Levaya, his son or his grandson said that he was machanech that whole family. That whole family, they were a beautiful Yakish family, but they had the Yakish tradition that everybody works. And he was the first one who learned the Kollel, and it was a Rebbe, and now it is, that whole family is full of young Goliath and Rabbeim and Chashiv and Talmidei Chacham.
Right. Okay. Now take us now to the next step. What happened that there was some kind of issue and falling out?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the next step, but
Okay, you take us to the next step, whatever you know.
Right. No, so therefore, so I'm just trying to give you this picture. He was a stern. He could put on this stern face, and it was his default face as the Mashgiach was a stern face because he's looking at you like you're supposed to be learning. But then he also had a beautiful smile, and when he spoke to you up close, it could be very warm. And this story.
Did he? 1 second. Did he teach Musar? What was his?
No. Oh yes, that's the thing. He was not teaching Musa. There was a Musa Seder, and then when the Musa Seder came, he took out his Musa Sefer and he learned it seriously. But he did not teach Musa. His share that he gave to that group that was, like I said, was mostly the guys who weren't really the group of learners. So that share was influenced by Rav Hutner, the type of machshava, but he did it. But he taught it as a shir on chumash, and he would go through parsha by parsha. And later he made the Sefer Mashgiach of Chaim, which is I assume a lot of it was those shiurim, but he was very thorough but coming from that perspective where it's Rav Hutner influenced type of Torah. And he's learning off Midrashim and Agaditis, and it's not just like learning Musa from the Musa Sefer.
So would you say that he considered Rabbi Hutner his Rebbe in Mahalach HaMachshava?
I don't think there's any doubt about it, because I don't see who else could possibly be a candidate. I mean, Rav Hutner, like he himself acknowledged to you, he took this Yosem.
I didn't hear those words. So what?
I don't see if there's any other candidate, because like he acknowledged to you, he's a Yosem kid. Rav Hutner took him, gave him a chance to learn and develop, and so the influence is, it has to be from Rav Hutner.
Okay. Next, what took
But
place?
I always like to say this story. I'm not the hero of this story. I'm the goat of the story, but I like to say it because it was also a very beautiful moment that I had with the Mashgiach. I always say it over that he there was one period, again, he was always trying to figure out strategies of how to deal with me, because on the one hand, I'm from a Chashva family, I'm his friend's son. On the other hand, I'm clearly not seriously learning, and I'm not really of age where you could have too much time on me. And how do you deal with it? It's a conundrum.
Right.
So at different points, he'd use different strategies. But at one point, he did a strategy where he wouldn't let me bottle in the base measures. If I sat with my chavrus, he couldn't stop that. But if I went over to any other table to schmooze, he'd come walking over and I'd have to run away. And he tried this for a while. And so he was really crowding me, And so one time I went to this other table, and maybe he was out for a minute, or I think maybe he had a Talmud at his table talking to him. But then when he's free, I'm there already. I'm in the schmooze already. I got into the schmooze. So he wiggles his finger, come over. I come over, and I know I'm gonna get it with the cup, I know I'm in trouble. And so he says to me, "Can you bring me a tehillim?" So in Chaim Berlin, there are two kinds of tehillim. the 90% of Tehillims were the ones that only had the words of the pasuk.
Yeah.
Could you? Because when they announced the clap to say Tehillim for something, you took out this Tehillim and it was all about reading.
Tehillim, yeah.
Right, but then there's some with Perushim that for learning. So I said, would the Mashgiach like a Tehillim with a Pirush or without a Pirush? So he said, and I knew in my mind, I'm thinking, what does he want to show me? Moshe Leitzim Layoshev. I figured that's what he's going to show me, right? So, but I'm playing a game like he's asking me to do him a favor. So I said, would the Mashgiach like with a Pirush or without a Pirush? So he says, you bring the Tehillim, I'll provide the Pirush. It was amazing. And but I know, so I really loved him for that. And I was
you wanted to hear you what?
I really loved him for that. I had a deep love and gratitude for him because he really was trying to help me.
Right.
He was trying to not ignore me, and see what can he do for this kid who's not in the right age. And at a certain point, I decided I'm going to go to the Chumash because I felt bad for him also. I felt like it looked, because I grew up with the cartoons. There was Bugs Bunny and the Roadrunner.
Yeah.
And there was always some guy trying to catch them, and they were always eluding. And that was my relationship with him. I was Bugs Bunny and the Roadrunner, and he was the one chasing.
Right.
So I felt bad. So at one point I asked to go to the Shia, and he says, you don't need my Shia, But I went for a few weeks just to get a sense of it. And it was I got to see on the inside the Avirad. I was in there, and I saw those fellas really respected him. I mean, it was a very nice thing. It was something to see. He had a real oilam that enjoyed what he was doing there, and he was smart enough, like I said, not to go after the big learners. You're a big learner, you left him alone.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, now the story.
I want to ask something else, but before you go on. But was he considered amongst the older Bacharim and the better Bachar a strong Talmud Chacham in Gemara, Rashi, Taisus, and Mefarshim, or not? Not.
So here's the thing. This is going to sound very funny. I'm sure his own children are going to end up watching this. And the truth is, I don't think anyone had a clear opinion one way or the other. Everyone's willing to be down on L'Chav's, but because he wasn't giving a share in learning, there was one or two guys who maybe had heard him as a Rebbe in Yeshiva of Eastern Parkway, where I think he was the 10th or 11th grade Rebbe, but before he came to be the Mashgiach. And they used to say that, it was a great Rebbe, and a lot of people used to say, so we heard nice things about his learning, but I never saw like a guy go over to him and say, I have a problem here in the Gemara. It just didn't occur to people to do that. You went to your Rebbe or you went to a Rosh Yeshiva, but you didn't go to the Mashgiach for that. So it's hard to say. Okay, we all respected him. As I'm saying, he had a beautiful dignity about him. He was
right. We have 9 minutes and 21 seconds left before the Zoom shuts off, so we have to get to the point, the bottom line.
Yeah. So the way the Machlokes went in terms of the Bachar was that.
What year was it? 76, 77, 78?
I think I went to Lakewood already in 77, so I'm going to say 76.
Okay, go ahead.
And so basically what happened was that all of a sudden he stopped coming. Where we thought maybe he's sick. He wasn't around for a few days. Then all of a sudden he came back. But when he came back, he wasn't talking to anybody. Didn't call anybody over. It was like not working, but he was present. He was sitting by his seat and learning and not talking. So it was very mysterious. And then eventually he stopped coming. So, so who knows? It was a modern moment. Now, what we heard at that time was that he felt that as part of the deal when they convinced him to leave being a Rebbe in Eastern Parkway to be the Mashgiach, is that they said that at some later point he would become a Rebbe or he'd become a Shutef the sort of ownership of the yeshiva. Maybe that would include his children getting positions. I don't know exactly. And so I don't know exactly if he interpreted right the original promise, and if he and if what they offered him and that he turned down. We didn't follow it because we didn't know. We were just welcome in the basement. It was all going on in the loft, and at a certain point he disappeared. He never came back, and we understood that there's bad blood. So it was very unfortunate, and a lot of us missed him. I mean, it was unfortunate. But we weren't of age to really be players. So.
And once he left, there was no zecher of him in Chaim Berlin for.
Yeah. Once he left, he was gone, and then eventually they gave the Mashgiach job to Rabbi Shimon Grono, who had been my high school rabbi, but he was gone. He was gone. So I want to let me say a few things quickly. He used to make a Hanukkah party in his house, one night of Hanukkah, with he said a little bit of different Torah, not too much. Some of the other rabbeim would say more, and the guys felt like it's a duty. Oh boy, I gotta go. But I think had a better feel for the crowd. Didn't say that much, said something. And then I remember one year he was very excited because he found a manuscript of Moed Tzur that had a few more stanzas in it.
Mm-hmm.
So we came to that night to the house and he gave everyone a copy of this paper with extra stanzas of Moed Tzur.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Klal Yisrael has its reasons, when they pick these stanzas, there's a reason. But the other ones were also some interesting material. And he was really, a very the quality that the German people have, and the German didn't have, is that they're very honest, and they take honestly much more seriously than others, and which is a tremendous mile. Now it may have some kind of downside somewhere. It may be hard for them to be Mishana Amana Shalom. I don't know where the downside is, but I mean, I also remember I did Shemesh Bar of Schwab, and so I got to see that personality of the German, and Reb Carlebach, even though he didn't learn in Germany so much, except what he learned from his father, but he brought that quality. That was really fascinating. He brought his father's quality of how the tzura of what it looks like to be a Yid Talmid Chacham, and a person of dignity and integrity. And then he learned in America with
Right. So, right. Now, so once he left, did you hear anything from Rabbi Hutner at any time?
No, not from him for sure. I mean, he didn't feel he had to answer to us.
No. I mean to say, did he ever say thank you very much for all the work he did?
We never heard anything like that. There was a story when the Rebbeim in Far Rockaway, when Chaim was in Far Rockaway, there was a point where they were out of money, and so the Rebbeim they sent, I think, Rav Cohen to be the shliach. And like this, they were suffering and they were not getting paid. A lot of yeshivas were behind, but then they heard that the English teachers got paid, so that got them very upset. So they sent to Rav Cohen, and Rav Hutner, I think, this is what I was told. Rav Hutner said to him that the English teachers would leave if they don't pay them, but the Rebbeim would stay, which was a fairly glad to test. But then he goes, it's not true, we didn't pay them. So it was a chinuchi moment. In other words, he gave him the true answer. But I said, what, I don't really have to tell you. You know what I mean? That was how we let him understand it. Right. So
go back. So what else did you want to say about Rabbi Carlebach? We have a few minutes left.
Well, like I said, he was first of all his children. He was a beautiful parent to all his children, and and I was closest with Yosef Tzvi, his oldest son, named after his father, who was my chavrusa in Chaim Berlin for a while.
And where does she live today?
I'm not positive.
Uh-huh.
I don't know
Okay.
that answer.
Okay.
And the son who was taking care of him, who was housing him, was Yoina, who apparently is a man of means that was able to do that. But I'm sure it's a very high expense. And the mother still, did a lot of nurses and all kinds of things. And then
Elishev, the daughter Elishev is a professor.
Right. And I, one of the things at Chaim Berlin is the boys didn't talk to the girls at all. So literally, I never said 2 words to her my whole life. But even though she was my friend's sister and all of this, but I sent her a message. I sent her a message through her husband a couple of years ago about an article of hers that I read in the Jewish Review of Books that I enjoyed it, but I never had a conversation with her. And her other daughter, who married Marmerstein, and she has beautiful children, grandchildren.
You didn't attend the Levaya. You went to the Levaya? No.
No, I was here, but no. This is very important for me to say, by the way. I consider this an absolute mifus. Hashgacha pratis sheba pratis.
That what? We have a minute left. Go ahead.
That I got to see him a month ago.
July 1st. Right, and he was coherent.
Yeah, he was coherent. Didn't remember exactly if I was me or my father, and I couldn't really figure out a way how to explain it to him for sure. But it was coherent. He gave me his svarim, and I felt like Hashem allowed me to close the circle.
Wow. And he was 97, right?
Yeah.
Your father probably sided with Rabbi Hutner and Chaim Berlin because he was a Talmud.
No, my father didn't side. My father his style was, listen, I'm not in the battle. Not my battle.
Right. Okay. Rabbi Yaakov, we will continue in Mitzvah Shem. Thank you very much. The purpose was Sarais playing in the good, and Baruch and the Kitzur Sheikh Offer, Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, and everyone else. And thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye.
Always a pleasure.